Hey everyone, welcome back to Brand New Take Aim Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brandon Hammonds. This week we have Jim Angott on from Cirrus Outdoor Products. Cirrus makes a awesome wind indicator, and basically Jim revolutionized the wind indication part of the outdoor industry when he came out with this product. It releases a vapor, and I'll let Jim explain the rest of it, but we do talk about everything from wind current, wind direction, thermals, you name it. It's all in this podcast. It's a great podcast. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, guys, we are live, Brand New Take Aim Podcast, and excited to get another show out, and excited to talk about a topic on the show that I've actually never talked about before. But today I have Jim Angott on, and from Cirrus Outdoors, and we're going to talk about wind indication, thermals, everything that the wind does, and kind of maybe we always talk about the wind as deer hunters, but I think they make a tool that is really overlooked, and I don't think anybody else on the market has anything like it, but kind of excited to get with Jim today and touch on his knowledge base on what he knows with thermals, wind currents, and all that good stuff. But Jim, welcome to the show.
Brandon, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man. It's always exciting to talk about, what we do and kind of what we know with listeners around the country, and we're real honored to be here this morning.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about the company and how you guys started, and like I said, I really believe you guys are kind of the only ones doing this field of wind indication, let's say, but give me a little bit of background on all that stuff, Jim.
Sure. Yeah, we started, Cirrus Outdoors started back in 2016. I had an idea of changing a category in the hunting market, and I have a marketing background, so I've always been in the marketing space, whether it was, retail and or even as far as in industry. I think you guys are up there in Michigan, and I actually was born and raised in Michigan, and was in the marketing world. Yeah, I was born and raised just outside of Detroit, in a little town called Roseville, and grew up there my whole life, and was in the automotive industry, and always played a major role in any kind of marketing departments along this journey. But the way Cirrus came about was I was working for a big company down here in Texas. I had moved to Texas because of the hunting world, and ended up working with a big company and in the retail space for almost like gas station C-store stuff. And I was overseeing 160 C-stores, and I realized that the tobacco market was making way for these electronic cigarettes, and it was interesting because if anybody knows anything about the convenience world, tobacco was the number one money maker in a gas station. You don't really make a lot of money on gas. You try to get people inside your gas station to buy stuff over the counter that has high margins. So that's why the tobacco is right behind the cashiers all the time, and it's in the prime spot, right? So we saw several years ago, back in 2016, a change in that market, and these big companies were carving out traditional tobacco space for electronic cigarettes. And I thought, holy cow, that's a really cool, first of all, it's a cool technology, and two, they're changing something. The customer has evolved. People start to realize smoking's bad for you, and then this is a better alternative, and there was a message there, and then all of a sudden these big companies had the cojones enough to go, we're going to pull some traditional money-making space out and put this new thing in. So a combination of their business model and their technology is how I adapted and came up with the idea of the Cirrus wind indicator. And I thought if I could utilize their technology by creating a vapor-like cloud and puffing it out without having to inhale it or any of this, and that's kind of where the magic comes in, and we'll talk a little bit about how it all came to develop. But that's really where the initial thought started. And so we had moved forward in time, and later now have 3 U.S. patents issued on one of the coolest products in the hunting market, and we had the mind.
Yeah, it's super unique, and that's a crazy story, Jim, and not where I thought you guys would have came up with that idea yet, but that is truly kind of amazing. And the unit itself, Jim, tell me a little bit about that. I know you said it releases a vapor-like cloud, but give us kind of the insight on the unit itself. I know it's handheld, but give me just the kind of the demographics of the unit. Rechargeable battery, how's it run, so everybody gets really familiar with how it works.
Yeah. So what we were up against, right? I came up with this kind of funny because I always make sure that in these podcasts or interviews I always talk about this. My nephew Thomas and I, he lives over there in Michigan near Grand Rapids. He still does. And anyway, every morning on to and from work, we would call and joke, and we'd be like, "Hey, I got an invention." And it was always in the hunting world, right? It was always something, and it was the funniest stuff because he'd be like, "Oh, I invented this thing that goes up a tree and prevents you." I'm like, "Yeah, well, they already have that." We would laugh, and then we'd hang up and go about our day, right? So then one day, stuck in traffic, and and I'm like, "Hey, I got an invention," and we just start laughing again, and I go, "Hey, I'm gonna figure out a way to puff vapor into the air in a little handheld device, and a cloud will come out, and then it should be able to move on the slightest wind and thermals." And so that's really how it really came to fruition, like as far as the idea. And he goes, "Dude, I think you're onto something. That's a pretty cool idea." And so we started talking about it. And I was doing some work with a guy here in Texas on some marketing stuff who owns an incubator company. And I don't know if your listeners know what an incubator company is, but they're Jeff Norris overseeing a company that creates patents and technology, and then they incubate those ideas into reality, and then they don't do nothing with it other than sell that technology. So they create something, they patent it, and then they sell that patent, and they hand the ball off to somebody who's in the game. So I was already doing something with Jeff on a different level, and I came to them and told them the same thing. I'm like, "Look, I think I've got an idea that is really going to change the hunting world, and this is what it is." And we started talking about it. Well, the name Cirrus, first of all, came from a cirrus cloud. And a cirrus cloud, when you look that up, much like cumulus clouds and various clouds in the atmosphere, a cirrus cloud moves on the slightest wind and thermals. It's typically over 10,000 feet, but it's a wispy, light cloud that just moves on the slightest wind and thermals. I thought, what a cool name. It's outdoorsy. A lot of thought kind of went into the brand and the name, and that's really kind of where Cirrus got its name and got its start. And if anybody has seen our logo, there's quite a bit involved in that too. But the unit itself, what I had envisioned was a little handheld device that was USB rechargeable, so you could plug it into a USB plug using a very standard, mini USB type port, almost on all of your electronic devices nowadays. And it plugs in the bottom. This thing would charge up. We put a big enough battery in it to last a very long time, which was key. And we had these little vapor cartridges that we formulated ourselves that were unlike the stuff that was on the shelf in the electronic cigarette world. And so we took those cartridges and we formulated a blend that was all natural. That was actually our MSDS sheets are, for the cloud cartridges, 100% vegan, kosher product. There's nothing, but this one particular ingredient. And it produced a very visible white cloud when you hold this power button down and you puff this little bellows, is what we call it, on the side of it. You puff that simultaneously while holding the power button down, and we created this really cool cloud that came out of the end of this thing. And when you're in these in a situation that there's very low wind or undetectable breezes or thermals, this vapor would react to it. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're really on to something now, you know? So we took the bar napkin drawings of all that with Jeff and his team, and we formed Cirrus Outdoors back in 2016. And we introduced it at the ATA show, and which is the Archery Trade Association show. And when we got there, we only had prototypes. I mean, we had 3D printed models, which 3D back then was really relatively new too, you know, 3D printing. And Jeff's team, they developed, you know, off of my little drawings there and how I kind of envisioned this thing and how I wanted it to work. Jeff and his group really crossed the T's and dotted the I's to bring this piece of plastic into our hands and touch it and feel it and prove it out. And then we just never stopped from there. I mean, we just continuously improved this unit from that day forward. And we'll talk about that progression, obviously, as we move forward in the podcast. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's a handheld USB rechargeable wind checker, and that's all Cirrus was back in 2016. That's all it did. You press the button, you puff this thing out, smoke came out of it. This cloud-like vapor is what we like to refer to it as, and it would move on the slightest wind and thermals. It has now since advanced to something into a total monster, and we'll eventually get there, like I said, in the podcast as we move forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I kind of wanted to, you know, touch on the fact, Jim, that I know you know this because it's your market, but for everybody that's not yet drawing the comparison, basically all there has been is a little plastic bottle, you squeeze it, and puffy white powder comes out. That doesn't tell you much. So you guys have gone and totally revolutionized that part of the industry and gone a completely different way. So what I want to get into with you, Jim, is now that vapor, once you guys puff it compared to the plastic little bottle and the white powder, let's go down that road real quick of what's the difference with your guys' vapor and how it works, and can you explain as a hunter, because I know you're a hunter as well, just what we're looking for with that wind current. You know, how does a wind current treat it different than, let's say, a thermal and stuff like that, and what does like maybe a dead zone where there just isn't anything moving? You know, how's all that affect us as hunters?
Yeah, we'll run down that rabbit trail there. It's a great point. That's exactly why we created this thing. So, you know, our competitors or competition over time has been, and we still face this today, quite frankly. The biggest challenge we had with creating or changing a category is it's completely new. It's completely untouched. No one really knows what it can do and what it can't do until you have it, right? It's kind of like the mechanical broadhead. Think about that. You know, you went from a fixed blade broadhead all those years, nothing has ever influenced it, and then all of a sudden, you know, the big guy came out with the mechanical broadhead Rage, and they spent tons of money in trying to educate people and bring it to fruition. And the biggest challenge that we face is the money gap, right? Hunters are frugal in certain things, and it's really weird. You'll get a guy today even talking about Cirrus. Well, I'm not buying a $50 wind checker. I can buy a $4 bottle of powder. Oh, I can lick my finger. I can get milkweed. It's free. We get that. We face that every day. And but then the guy's wearing a $400 Sitka jacket, and, you know, he's never shot anything bigger than a 4-pointer. You know, it's kind of funny how people pick and choose their poison based off of perception, right? And that's kind of where it goes back to the Cirrus and traditional ways of checking the wind. True. So the wind market. Let's start with milkweed, right? Because milkweed is something that you guys have up there in the Midwest. I've now moved to Texas. I've been down here for 15 years. I'm in the hunting industry. I've traveled all over the country hunting. I've traveled out of the country hunting. We don't have milkweed. We can't get it. It's not something you just go pluck off of a cactus down here and hope that the pods are dry and you can throw one up in the air and see what it's doing. I think milkweed's an amazing plant, and it works, and it's great. And the guys that have access to it, that's awesome that they utilize it. But it still doesn't. It still can't do what the Cirrus can do, and I'll prove that out. Same with powder. Powder is obviously per particle and per molecule is heavier than vapor. Powder weighs something. When you puff that powder out, okay, you get this big, huge puff of powder goes up in the air. 3/4 of it will fall straight down, and the other half of it, depending on how fine it is, there's some great powder products out there. I mean, Smoke in a Bottle is an amazing product. I mean, it really is. It's it's very fine. It's very light, and it almost creates that really cool vapor-looking thing. But again, it still can't do what the Cirrus does. And again, I'll bridge these gaps, but I'm trying to bridge some comparisons, right?
Right.
Throwing dirt in the air, again, very heavy. Yeah, you'll get some residual of those particles or that lightweight material to move, which is fine. Licking your finger works great when there's detectable breeze, right? Guys will go, I don't need a wind checker, I got a face. I feel the wind on my face. Like, back in the settlers' days, that was a technique that people that hunted for their families and livelihood, that was their very common telltale sign of which way the wind was blowing. But again, the Cirrus has changed all of that. And here's why. No matter what and where you are, the next time you're driving down the road, look at a smokestack at a plant, especially there in Detroit. The Midwest is full of big power plants, big smokestacks, your chimney, perhaps in the winter, a lot of steam coming out of people's homes because of the heat that's on. Take a look at how that reacts to the slightest wind in thermals. No matter what the influence is, in a room, in a sealed room, in a dead calm day, that smoke has to move in some capacity. It will drift, it will lift, it will sink. Particles that weigh something don't react that way. And even when you're trying to feel it on your finger or you're trying to feel it on your face, if there's no detectable actual current, wind or something moving, even at a half of a mile an hour that you could be ultra sensitive to, it's very difficult to lick your finger and understand and know which way the wind's blowing. But vapor will react to the slightest wind in thermals, and that's why Cirrus shines. So we do this tenfold by the evolution of the product too. As I stated before, when we first started, Cirrus was a $50 wind checker. That's what it was, $49.95, and you pressed the button and smoke came out and it showed you which way the wind was blowing. We knew to be a viable company, we needed to constantly up the game. We had to constantly put something new and something better inside of that unit to be valuable to the hunter. I wanted it as a hunter. I know everybody out there that's listening wants more in a pack than what they get, right? I mean, you want more out of what you're buying. Just like I said, the jacket, for example, the high dollar coat, you're getting a lot more than just a jacket. I mean, it's made of the best material. It's got an extra pocket. It's got a bino strap thing in it. I mean, there's more value.
Value, that's key word.
Right. Value. And value and function are the two most important things we can have as hunters in our tool bag. That's why you buy the best bow, or that's why you buy the mechanical broadhead with a tons of function to it, and it's made well, and it performs. That's why you buy what you buy. That's what makes a decision for a consumer on anything. And so Cirrus just constantly innovated more into this unit. And since then, like I was saying, we've now added, with the current model we have out on the market, the CWI 200, which is basically the Cirrus Wind Indicator 200 model, the second model. It has red LEDs in it. It has white LEDs in it. And it also has the ability to charge your portable electronic devices like a backup charger. So now there's more value than just the wind checker, right? You can check the wind walking in and out of your set because you can light up that smoke and you can clearly see it. And you can go out to our Facebook page and YouTube or our website and see tons of pictures and video of that. It has a white backup flashlight, so if you lose something or you need something in your pack, even a backup blood trailing light, you can put the thing on the ground and get you out of a jam. And the battery was so big, like we talked about before, it put this big, huge rechargeable battery in it. We thought, why not be able to extract some of that power and get you out of a jam if your cell phone was to die? Or now the guys that are coyote hunting are running thermal scopes all night long, and there's a lot of predator hunts and stuff there in Michigan where I'm reading about and actually being part of from a company where guys are out running, thermal scopes and night vision scopes, and these things die, and they could literally plug a Cirrus into the side of their scope and get another hour or two hunting out of it. And so anyway, we've kind of evolved this thing into more of a wind checker, but I know you probably want to get more into the functionality in the field, so we can probably talk about that a little next.
No,
Let me know
that's fine.
If I'm going off on a tangent,
No, that's fine. I wanted to get, like you said, I'm one of those guys that, Jim, I mean, you kind of just described to a T. I'm going to do all those things, and I don't really care what something costs. If I want it, eventually I'm going to get it, but I'm not just getting it because it costs that or it is what it is. I'm one of those guys, it has to have value to it. So, like some of those items you just explained, right there that put me over the edge. Like, man, now I can see it. Now I'm totally in. Like those extra things, that they do count. And I think that's, a lot of hunters really appreciate that.
Well, I can tell you the biggest thing that counts is I'll be honest. I mean, the biggest thing that counts, and it's kind of funny, we were actually by big companies that have interest in Cirrus and have talked to us about our cartridges, for example. They go, your cartridges last too long. Your batteries last too long. They're consumable. They should be consumable where they just use them up and then they got to buy more. We've had people in the industry tell us that, oh, you guys, your product is crazy. I haven't charged it in 2 years.
Wow.
You need to scale that back so if people buy a new one or if they buy more product. That's not the case. That's not what, as a consumer and a hunter and an inventor, I wanted to bring something above and beyond, period. And here's why. We'll go back to the powder. Let's go back to powder because it's the number one used product in wind detection and hunting, period. No matter what you see on TV or look at, 90% of the guys are puffing powder or whatever it may be, just because there hasn't been a whole big a competitor coming into the market like us. But think about this, and this may not pertain to a lot of guys in Michigan, but the guys that get out west or go on a trip of a lifetime, say they're going elk hunting. You can take a bottle of powder, say a good one too, a high-end, top-of-the-line powder bottle, say $8. You throw that thing in your pocket, and elk hunters get started at the bottom of the mountain, or they either start at the top of the mountain, depending on what thermals they're doing. And to get to the elk, it takes 3/4 of that bottle of powder to determine what your approach is going to be. You're out there all day long, walking around for 7, 8, 9 hours to get to an elk that you're hearing on the next ridge, and you're puffing it. I'm talking from experience. You're puffing that powder nonstop, trying to make sure you got the right angle, make sure they're not dinging you. And guess what happens when you get within that 100 yards? When you're closing in that last 100 yards, you're down to that little bit of powder now in the bottom of your bottle. And we've all been there. We all know what that's like. To get that stuff out is an act of Congress. I mean, you've got to shake it. You got to turn it over. You're trying to get the last little bit out. You're puffing it. You got to squeeze it real hard. You got all this movement. And Cirrus doesn't do that. Cirrus is a product that we built to last. So you get 1,400 puffs per cartridge. We did that for that reason, so that you could go up and down that mountain ridge all day and all night for 5 days and not run out. Now, granted, it's a consumable thing. It will run out, but that's not what it was designed for. It was designed to last, and it's designed to do things that the traditional products don't do. And so guys that are in these spot and stalk hunts, or guys that are in their tree stands and hunting for 3, 4, 5 days in deer camp, during like the Michigan rifle opener. You guys take a week off or 10 days. They're up in the UP. I wanted something that's going to last them, you know, and it doesn't break the bank. I mean, these things are $15 for 2 cartridges at $7.50 a piece to last you almost an entire season. Yeah, there's a little money up front to get the Cirrus unit, but like I said, it's adding so much more value now with the lights and the chargers and the this and that. Now you've got a tool in your bag that you use year-round. It doesn't have to be just a wind checker. It can be your flashlight during turkey season. It could be your backup charger for riding in the truck, or it can, you know, it just never has to leave your pack. And so that's really where Cirrus shines and has changed the game when it comes to the category.
Yeah, that's totally different than, I mean, obviously that was the question I asked, and that's totally different than anything that's out, and 10 times the value of just some white powder. But just to touch on again what you said, just hunting-wise, I know guys use that powder out west quite a bit, but, you know, here in the Midwest, I would by far say that's the number one thing we guys use to check the wind, and you're always moving, always shaking it, and we all know when you move, you get caught. And for you to have to pull something out of the pocket, now instead of shaking it up and down rapidly, you can literally just with your thumb hit that button. That's a huge advantage right there in being stealth, and we know how important that is.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, and I commend everybody to use products to check the wind, right? That's our thing. We're in the wind indication market. You know, if you can afford powder, please go get it, use it. And if you can afford a Cirrus, please go out and buy one at Cabela's, Bass Pro, or online or wherever you can get one, right? I mean, we encourage people to check the wind. It's so critical and so crucial. And I'll just speak to my, to my experience and to our product line in the hunting situation. It was a great point you made about not moving a lot. That is one cool thing about the Cirrus. It's you press down this button with your thumb, you simultaneously puff this vapor-like cloud out with your index finger or however you hold it, and this silent, quiet little cloud puffs out to as little or as much as you like. You control it by the volume of air you're putting through that bellow system. You can either, some guys like to just squeeze it, you get this little tiny fine line of smoke come out, or you can hammer the thing and put a big, huge cloud of smoke out to see what it's doing. But what makes you a better hunter is, one, it's just knowledge. It's no different than why did you set your tree stand up where you set it up? Why did you put your pop-up blind on the edge of that swamp at that day or that time or whatever? You're taking all this, your knowledge base and your hunting experience for that particular day. And the number one goal is to be successful. So why would you not use the wind to your advantage and get more knowledge from the wind to the best of your ability? Because we all know, no matter what we're hunting, I don't care if it's we have armadillos down here in Texas, and I'm not joking. If you don't have the wind right, it's over. You are not getting close, and it's an armadillo digging holes in your backyard. You will not get close if the wind's wrong. Everything in the outdoor world that we're hunting and pursuing is using their wind to their advantage, always. And the white-tailed deer being the most common animal that we hunt, we've all been there, and we've all seen it. And how many times have you heard hunters say, man, these things must have a sixth sense? They have all the senses is right. What they have. And they're utilizing that nose more than anything. They utilize it to breed. They utilize it to live. They utilize it to eat. It's their nose is what moves a whitetail forward. And so understanding and knowing your thermals and your wind at every second or every minute of that hunt is absolutely critical. And the Cirrus does things, like I said, that the competitor products don't do. And that's allowing you to see what's moving on the slightest wind and thermals. When you think it's a dead calm day, okay, and this is a story we talk about all the time, when you think it's a dead calm day, and we've all been there, it's mid-October, it's 65 degrees, the deer are on their feet, it's just, there's not a breath of air. It's like you thinking, man, this is it, it's golden, we're kicking off in the rut. And you look over to your right and you see this big buck coming, or you see a deer coming, and they get 3/4 of the way to you, and then they just stop, and they look up, or they turn, and they take that one step back, and you're like, what in the hell is going on? It's got a sixth sense. They know when something's wrong. No, they're dinging you. They got you. They picked up a thermal. They picked up a wind current or something that is undetectable by your face, your finger, the milkweed, or whatever else you may be using, because it really just, there's zero out there that you can detect. But if you were to puff that Cirrus, you would clearly see instantly that wind was actually moving right towards them. And so the advantage that you'll have by understanding that and knowing that is, I could have maybe turned my chair, I could have maybe spun around in my tree stand and got into a position where I could have stopped that deer before it got to that line. And that's the key. That's what makes us successful, more so with the Cirrus than anything else.
Now, Jim,
question
for you. After, sure, you're describing this hunt, so I just want to ask, when you hit that puff, how far does a current take it that we can visibly see it? Because that's pretty important too, because, I mean, there's situations we know we're on a field edge or in the timber, and sometimes you can see 40 and 50 yards and maybe watch a vapor do that. So how far usually can guys see this after they use the wind indicator?
Right. Well, there's advantages and disadvantages, right, to anything. And vapor, obviously, being smoke, it's no different than you blowing out your birthday candles. When you blow out the birthday candles in your house, the residual smoke goes up and it lingers for a little bit. If you were to blow out birthday candles out at a park, clearly you don't see the smoke as far. So there are some advantages and disadvantages to that. Now, we've had days, and I've had experiences where I could see that vapor go out 50, 60, 70 yards, more than enough to what I need. And it's so funny because we get guys go, well, don't go far enough. I don't see. I'm like, first of all, if you puff powder, or if you're puffing or throwing milkweed, which we've done, and you have a wind that can carry that milkweed, it'll go way out there. And there is an advantage to seeing it that far. But that's not always the case. Milkweed only go as far as until it hits a stick or hits a branch. If you're in the wide open and you got detectable breeze, you should know that it's probably blowing out there pretty good. You know what I mean? So
yeah, for sure.
The Cirrus really shines on very slight to undetectable winds. That's where this thing makes you a better hunter. And because we get lackadaisical, like I said, we don't think that we think it's the perfect day. You don't realize that it's actually, the ground temperature is really cold from the morning, and you got a really nice sunny day. Well, guess what? The thermals may be dragging your scent straight down the tree, and you're not going to detect that with anything else. You're just not. When you hit that Cirrus and all of a sudden you see the vapor go out about 4 feet and it starts to drop down, you're like, oh, crap. That's interesting. My scent is actually dropping down to the forest floor. It's getting down to their level faster. Then there's other days when you hit the Cirrus and you look at it and it drifts out about 1.5 feet, 2 feet from you, and all of a sudden starts rising instantly. And you're like, okay, well, we got ground warming. We have thermal ground warming. The ground is warm and hot, and the air up above it is thin, and that's why it rises. You can do this with your Cirrus. You can see us do it on Facebook in different tests. Chuck Weldon from Whitetail Fix, popular TV show. Chuck goes to his stove and hits the Cirrus over a cold burner, and the smoke just kind of sits there residually over the top of the stove, doesn't do much. He turns the burner on, boom, smoke rises instantly because the thermal from the heat is lifting that up. And so all these little kind of nuances and things happen on a daily basis in the whitetail woods, in the woods that we're trying to pursue, that our precious time, our precious money goes into that hunt. We developed a product that helps make that precious time and money a success and value to it. That's what we did. That's where we're at. And we'll prove it time and time again with as many people that try to question it. We can prove it out. We can prove to you that the Cirrus will absolutely change the way you hunt and make you more successful by being, more knowledgeable. Anybody that's more knowledgeable about anything,
I think there's
you're more knowledgeable about your bow, right? The more you shoot, the more you practice.
Right.
What is that? That's knowledge. It's knowledge on, hey, if I anchor here, if I hold here, if I pinch my shoulders and put my elbow in my back pocket, that's all knowledge, and it makes you a better shooter. That adds to your success, much like the Cirrus can. If you understand it, utilize it, use it, and educate yourself on it, and not be closed-minded to the fact that it's not just a $50 gimmick, or it's something that can actually help you out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options with that just for self-education, which I think would be a lot of fun to use. And there's always times in the stand where you're kind of looking to pass time, so to speak. So it would be a good idea in certain situations to use it, kind of learn how to use it, learn what those changes in the vapor does, what you're seeing there. We all know, at least I know, how important that is, and we've talked about it a lot in this podcast about just their nose and how it affects them, and you're right by what you said. It's every day of their life. They live by that thing. So I think it's such a cool tool that you guys have come up with, such a cool product that I definitely was excited to talk to you about it today, Jim. But before we go, tell me, Jim, what is maybe hunting-wise, what's one of the craziest situations you've ever used your product?
To be honest with you, I'm going to take it out of context a little bit. It is not. It wasn't a hunting situation. That's another thing, that we didn't touch base. I know this is a hunting podcast, but the Cirrus is used by our U.S. military, our Border Patrol, and canine handlers all over the world. And canine handlers, obviously, it's just like hunting for the bad guy, right? I mean, it's just like quail hunting. How many times have you seen a bird dog and run it down a field, and they go past the pheasant, and they spin around and they point, back the other direction? It's because that dog did not catch that wind until he went past the bird, and then boom, he caught it, spins around, and now he's on point. So the canine handlers all over the world utilize Cirrus the same way. They might be in a cargo ship, and the dog is scratching on a curtain trying to get the drugs inside, when really the drugs are way up at the other end of the ship. It just happened to be there's an air current coming down through a pipe or a tube, and it's really drawing all that scent into a confined or little ball of berry that the dog's hitting on, but really it's way back, 40, 50 yards up the ship or whatever it is. 40, 50 feet up the other end of the ship is where the drugs are at. So in context, heating and air conditioning guys use Cirrus, the golfers use Cirrus, and canine handlers. And to answer your question, one of the coolest things we've ever done was a rainy day at my house. And I've got this video, and I'd love to share it with you and your listeners. So if you have a platform that I can send you this video, I will. I hit the Cirrus on a kind of a misty, rainy day in my backyard, and I thought I'm gonna videotape this thing in slow motion. And so I'm puffing it, and I probably puffed, I would say anywhere from 8 to 10 very distinct, very large bellows of smoke, right? This just very, I'm trying to paint this picture, but these very indistinct, there's a puff, then space, there's a puff, and space, and then there's a puff. And you're watching this move, right? And it's moving towards my house. And the puffs, all of a sudden, and if you can visualize this, say the puffs were about 10 to 12 inches apart, and they're drifting very slow in a slow motion video. It's very, very cool. And all of a sudden, the puffs start to close the gap on each other. So now they're going from 12 inches apart to 8 inches apart to 2 inches apart, and all of a sudden they're in a ball, and all of these 12 puffs that I just got collected and have created this giant mass cloud of smoke that we created with the Cirrus, this vapor ball, so to speak, and they're all stuck under my eave of my house. And then all of a sudden it starts to wisp over the roof, like in just a single little tiny line. And I'm like, what in the world is happening? And it was such an eye-opener to me. That was it's the most compelling video. We've sold more Cirrus units showing people that at a trade show than any other video we've ever done. Those are the kind of things that happen in the woods. Those are the kind of things that happen in everyday situations, whether you're a canine handler, a hunter, an HVAC technician, is understanding what air current can and can't do. And by watching those 10 or 12 puffs that were literally a foot apart go across about a 15 to 20-yard span and get up under the eave of my house and ball up into this big, huge, round vapor cloud all together, no longer apart, and then just slowly trickle over that roof, was like, holy crap, that is cool. That was so mind-blowing that is a true thermal wind current reaction to something you would never, ever in a million years be able to see by any other product, period. You just would never see it. You couldn't see it with powder. You can't see it with milkweed. You can't see it by licking your finger. But the Cirrus wind indicator and that video, it will blow your mind. And, you can tell by my I get goosebumps talking about it. It's our thing. I pumped this thing over, 1.5 million times since its beginning, and I still sit in my office and hit it and still puff on it and check things and look at things, and it never gets old. And it was an eye-opener, man. I'm telling you, I'd love to share anybody that's interested in that video or anything like that. I don't know what your reach or platform is to get that out to people, but if they need to, they want to reach out to me directly, I'll be more than happy to share it with them and share it with the world, because it's
Jim, if you have it on YouTube, you can send it to me, and then I'll attach it in the show notes as well.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll get it to you one way or the other.
Yep, for sure. And one other question, Jim, it will bug me if I don't ask, but have you noticed any kind of change before we go with like the barometer or different pressures in the day?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't educated myself on the barometer. I've been watching the moon phases a little bit more. I think there's a lot of opportunity. Again, it goes back to educating yourself as a hunter. I think that's something that we need to do. Okay, I think it's something that we need to look at as in correlation to how Cirrus reacts to big tidal moves, right, or big moon phase moves, or barometer rise and fall, temperature. I think there's plenty of opportunity there, and I'm kind of glad you asked that, because I'd hate to get off this podcast without talking about the new product that we developed, and it's called the Pro Cirrus. It's going to be another addition to our lineup, and we've been talking about it for a couple years, and we promised it last year. It didn't come out, and the reason it didn't come out is we just didn't get it right, and we're not going to release something that's not right. And now we got it right, and of course we're faced with this global thing called the coronavirus, and that's affected China, and deadlines and time, and the tariffs and real world problems have hit little Cirrus Outdoors down here in Victoria, Texas, and much like it has globally with millions of companies. But anyway, we're bringing out the Pro Cirrus. It's in production, and so we're hoping to have it here by June. And on that Pro Cirrus, we have the ability to check your game card, so you can stick your SD game card directly out of your camera, and you plug it right into the bottom of the new Pro Cirrus. You connect from your phone to the Cirrus using a Wi-Fi module. That's built in, so it's really cool. So you have this wireless connection now from your phone to the Pro Cirrus, and it's app-driven. So you just go to the Pro Cirrus app, and you're able to like and view your photos right there, right in the field. And the app has several features, including map and compass. And with app technology, as you know, we can constantly further that information as well. So who knows, down the line we may have a tie-in to what the barometer is doing, what the weather is doing. And as we develop our app into something bigger and better each and every day, there's no telling what kind of feedback we'll be able to get out of this thing. But, yeah, that's kind of where we're going with it. And, again, advancing the technology and the new Pro Cirrus. Hopefully we're praying and looking at the timelines and, of course, this virus stuff. But right now it's really looking like about the 1st of June we should have product to sell, and they'll also be available at Bass Pro, Cabela's, of course, all of our outlets, Amazon and Cirrus Outdoors and such. So, but yeah, who knows, right? We need to just keep moving the technology forward, and but yeah, who knows, right? We need to just keep moving the technology forward and educating our hunters the best way we can with the product that we develop.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I look forward to that Pro Series coming out. And Jim, just thanks for being on today. There's so much to talk about with wind currents, thermals, and all this stuff again. And hopefully maybe in June, July, after that comes out, we can reconnect again and talk about that product.
Yeah, it'd be great. Like I said, we can now that everybody kind of knows what Cirrus is, sound like a commercial, and we probably need to revisit soon. And if you want to follow up sooner than later, let's just talk about hunting and talking about the wind and thermals, and I'll be more than happy to carve out more time. And now that we know what tool to use, we'll figure out a way to share some hunting stories and the best way to use it.
Absolutely,
I'm all in.
That'd be great.
Your time, man.
Yeah, for sure. So Jim, real quick, let everybody know where they can find Cirrus products at, or Cirrus products at, and website and social media as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's Cirrus like a cloud. It's Cirrus. So Cirrus Outdoors. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. We just now started a little TikTok thing. I'm an old geezer, so I don't know what all the cool stuff is, but I'm trying. So, but we've got. It's not hard to find Cirrus stuff. You get out there, we've got great brand ambassadors. Jim Shockey utilizes the Cirrus unit and has some really cool stuff out there online. Kip Campbell, one of our brand ambassadors that had been with us from the beginning from Red Arrow. Of course, the guys, our friends, the Bone Cold TV guys out of Western New York. It's not hard to find Cirrus, and if you need to buy one. Amazon, we have them available available through Prime. You can buy one through us at CirrusOutdoors.com, and certainly Bass Pro, Cabela's, Fleet Farm, and many fine retailers across the United States carry the Cirrus wind indicator with the LEDs and the charging unit. That's the only product we currently have, as well as a line of replacement cartridges in various scents, from Cloud, which is the unscented, and the Earth, which is a little cover scent, Acorn, and Pine. So got a nice little lineup for you guys, and new products coming down the line.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can't wait to see those. And thanks again, Jim. I appreciate your time. And everybody, you can find us every week on iTunes, the Unfiltered Outdoor app, and the Outdoor Podcast channel. So thanks again, Jim.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. We can talk anytime, Blue.
Absolutely.